Welcome back, and today is my first episode that was a request. Someone requested, one of the first requests I ever got, so I'm going to do a review of it today. This is Goosebumps, Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. The episode starts with Joe and Mindy, brother and sister, throwing a baseball towards each other after we've had a pan shot of basically an idyllic American town, although I don't know if it's in Canada because this was a Canadian-made show.
Cut it out, Joe. Quit throwing it so hard.
Come on, throw it right.
Here, how's this?
After some goading, Mindy throws it over the garden hedge, but it doesn't actually look like it's landed that far in front on the neighbour's garden.
I'm not going in there.
Just as I predicted, the ball hadn't gone that far into the garden, but Mindy doesn't want to go in. What if he comes out again? So we've got some build up to the neighbour. What is this guy like? What's going to happen? Joe decides he's going to go in there and get the baseball bat.
Now it's mine.
How did his sister not see the neighbour or warn them about the neighbour? And he's in trouble now.
And you stay out of my garden.
This is our first introduction to the neighbour, who's got a military pass called Major McCall. Although he looks and sounds a little bit like William Shatner. He also reminded me of the guy from the Haunted Mask episode. So I did look up, this is actually a different actor. This is David Hemblin, and the Haunted Mask was Colin Fox. But it did remind me of that, and I wondered if they reused the same character. So I know in Are You Afraid of the Dark, which I'll get to that show eventually, there are one or two actors, one specifically I can think of, who they reuse him in multiple episodes. Major McCall takes the ball back into his house. Joe looking a bit downtrodden. In the background we see their dad return in the car. Their dad seems as house proud, as garden proud at least, as their neighbour, because they ask if he's got more lawn ornaments when they say, "Look what I found." They then go into the garage and he unveils his newest additions.
Now, come on, let's take a look at these little guys, huh?
All right. Whoa, man, these things are weird looking.
We're introduced to the garden gnomes that Dad's just bought. He actually tells us they're going to be gnomes before we unveil them. They're facing the front of the car, it starts to fall on him, and we get that classic thing we get from Goosebumps episodes. Sometimes it's less than a minute in, sometimes a bit further. You just get a random shock thing happen and it fades to black. This isn't really that shocking. The gnome falls on him, his dad's on the flatbed with him, his sister's outside the car there. Door just crashes closed. I don't think it leaves much of a cliffhanger, and we're going to go straight back into the episode to see what happens.
Come on, Joe, stop horsing around, huh? Joe? Are these things terrific or what?
I don't know. They're kind of evil looking.
The dad elaborates that these are his secret weapon to win the summer garden contest, so we can kind of see why his garden was looking the way it was, why Major McCall's garden was looking the way it was, and why he didn't want Joe's baseball in his garden. I also want to say at this point, for this episode, if I was directing or producing, I would have picked houses with smaller gardens, because what they've effectively done, and you'll see it in nearly every shot, the gardens look nice, but they're very big, and then they've just got set displays dotted around. Like, you'll see a fountain, it looks really good, but then there's a big patch of grass around it, and then you'll see like a random tree, which has like chalk pebbles near the bottom of it, but then there's a big open space again, and I suppose that's not the main part. Well, I suppose it is in the way. It takes place in the garden, doesn't it? But just really something that stuck out to me. They could have used smaller gardens and still used the same amount of props, and it would have looked better.
Yeah, and at Christmas we can dress them up as elves.
Santa's elves?
Dracula's elves, baby.
I wonder what Dracula's elves would look like. It then cuts to outside in the back gardens. We see Major McCall taking a photo of part of his garden, lining up a camera on a tripod, just as Joe and his dad and Mindy are setting up where they're going to put these newly acquired gnomes. I say it's a camera. At this point, it might be one of those devices that shoots a laser so you can see something's level. So it might not actually be a camera, but he's taking a lot of care and attention to his garden anyway, either way.
I was pretty sure I'd win the garden contest this summer, but now I'm positive. These are the most ridiculous looking things I've ever seen.
Another thing I noticed in this shot is just how on point the colour matching is of one of the gnomes' hats to the shirt that the dad's wearing.
Wise up and get rid of all this junk.
You see what I mean, though, and this is probably why the Major's shaking his head. They've just put a load of props out in the garden to make it look decorated and just space them out because it's a big garden.
Kids, come on. The Major is entitled to his opinion.
I don't need your permission. The contest judges will tell you which garden is best.
Well, I'll take my chances.
We then get a sort of monologue from Major McCall saying that it's no real contest for him now and how great his garden is, so enjoy it.
My immaculate lawn, my flawless melons. That summer garden award is marching straight home to me.
We'll see about that.
What was that, Joe?
Nothing, sir. You may go back to your petunia, sir.
Joe.
That's okay, Burton. I just hope Joe here isn't planning to do anything to my garden.
After some mildly disrespectful banter from Joe, we get Major McCool given a warning that if Joe does anything to his garden again, there's going to be repercussions.
Let me say this loud and clear. If anything happens to my garden, I'll be looking for him.
Is it just me, or does that dog look either like he's really kind of drugged up on something, or he's got some kind of secret that he doesn't know? Maybe he comes to life. That'd be really cool. Also, is that dog wearing a beret? What follows is a nighttime scene. We see something from the first person perspective running around the garden, going into Major McCool's back garden and sort of destroying things. Sort of making mischief, and I actually thought, even though this is a vegetable at first, when I first saw it, I actually thought, is that an ostrich egg? Because it looks very similar in size and in shape to an ostrich egg. Whilst I was trying to deliberate how many flamingos in your garden is too many, Major McCool is round at the house because he's not happy with what's happened, and he's pretty sure he knows who the culprit is.
They're totally ruined.
Take it easy, Major.
Take it easy! Look at this!
Oh, boy.
I warned him.
What's up?
Well, Joe, apparently somebody smashed the Major's melons last night.
You can sort of see why I thought that looked a bit like an ostrich egg. I knew it wasn't, but I just thought it looked like one. At this point, given the name of the episode, it's quite obvious what it's leading up to. But you can't blame the Major here. It does look like Joe's guilty. In a realistic world, it does look like Joe's guilty. I'm aware it's a 20-minute episode, and it's very similar to some things in The Haunting Hour and the other shows that I've seen like this, where they sort of have to jump the gun on people assuming the right thing because we've got to fit it into about 20 minutes. But it felt a bit rushed how he's suddenly jumping the gun that I think it might be these gnomes, the way he's looking at them. And I mean, it's a kid's show at the end of the day, but I kind of thought they rushed it a bit there, where he's getting blamed for something that's happened in the garden, vandalised his neighbour's garden. Hang on, we've got these gnomes. I think it's these gnomes. But I suppose that's how a kid would think in a way. So maybe it does work.
Want to play ring toss? The gnomes' pointy heads will make perfect targets.
How about your pointy head?
You are so immature. Perfect.
I'm telling you, Mindy, I didn't smash his stupid melons.
Then who did?
I don't know, but if I did, I'd shake his hand.
Is that what your father calls punishment?
Joe and Mindy have another confrontation with Major McCool. I thought at this point it wouldn't happen, but I thought it'd be funny if they challenged him to a game of ring toss, and whoever loses has to not enter the competition. I thought that would have been really cool. After warning her brother that he should just stay away from the jerk that is their neighbour, Major McCool, Mindy walks away. Joe notices on one of the gnomes their hands covered in ink, just like potentially the ink that was on one of those melons that was a crude drawing of Major McCool. Now, if this had happened without him eyeing them up to begin with, it would have made more sense for him to catch that detail. I feel like they should not have included the scene where he's already looking at them as if he suspects something. If this was the first clue that put him in that direction, it would have made more sense, I feel. Joe also finds a melon seed in one of their mouths, and it was quite funny because when I watched this, I wondered if he took his hand and I thought he was just going to paint ink on its lips like lipstick and just vandalise it for some reason, but no, he was putting his finger in the mouth because it had a melon seed in its mouth. So he's adding up the dots now as we cut to nighttime again. Joe wakes up, he looks out towards the gnomes, they're still there, they've not moved. He then looks into the trees, there's about 3, I think, pairs of red glowing eyes. He then decides to go out into the garden himself at night. He approaches the trees and he sees the red glowing eyes still. What I also notice about this, there's a very slight hint of the music in the background being, just for like a note or so, being similar to the police station main hall theme in Resident Evil 2. And I know that's not really relevant, but I just thought that was a cool thing I noticed, so I'm going to throw it in, a bit of that music, just so you can see for yourself if you think it matches up. I mean, it's not the same song, they've not copied it, but it sounds very similar. Jack then looks into Major McCool's garden. We've seen a raccoon or a cat kind of run through at night really quick, but then he looks over into the garden, can't see anything, but you can hear a kind of cat yelping. I don't know if it's being hurt, and you can hear some laughing. climbs over, sticks to the side hedge. He can then see the 2 gnomes that his dad brought home, now alive and now causing mischief and throwing, they're getting crops and throwing them around. And then they notice him.
Wait a minute.
They slowly walk towards him as he backs away, saying, wait a minute. But then floodlights come on, alarm comes on, Joe's there, the gnomes are there, but the gnomes are now inanimate, and Joe is in a lot of trouble.
What's going on down here? My garden. What have you done?
But I didn't, sir. It was the gnomes. It was...
My lilies. My azaleas. My eagle.
All joking aside, his lilies, his azaleas, they've been wrecked, most likely, but the eagle, they then goes to, my eagle. I think that's going to be fine.
What kind of fool do you take me for? You're gonna pay for this.
I do like the fact that they're keeping up with the gimmick that he even sleeps in camo gear and a dark green robe. That's kind of funny that everything about him is army related. Joe's dad tells Joe that his punishment is to fix the garden until it's perfect. Cut to next morning, Joe's fixing the garden as best he probably can.
Move it, soldier! Right. Over to the Pentagon.
When he said that, I was sort of expecting he had a Pentagon, kind of the building, monument, miniaturised in his garden, but he was referring to the middle, which is shaped like the Pentagon, to be fair. Like a Pentagon, like the Pentagon. And keeping up with his military theme, I think. And I quite like this little line from the Major.
Forget it. Got it? Good.
Something doesn't smell so good.
I'm too tired to smell it anymore.
After a little banter with his sister Mindy, which really doesn't add anything to the story, she just doesn't believe him and he says, it's true, I'll prove it to you. We cut to night time, there's a midnight alarm clock, Joe's up and he's going to catch these gnomes at it this time.
Great, no tape.
I was literally going to say the same thing when I saw the tape bit in the corner. But when he goes to grab the tape, he then looks back and they're gone. At this point, the best thing he could do is set that camcorder up on himself and just sleep for the rest of the night. And then he's got proof, at least, that it's not him. He may not have proof it's gnomes, but that's how I would do it if I was in this situation. I'd just be like, right, I'm going to sleep here. Camcorder's on, filming me sleep. I've got an alibi.
Dad, wake up!
Huh? What?
The gnomes!
I didn't hear the phone. It's no phone.
Not the phone, the gnomes!
The gnomes are calling. It's a sour.
Joe then goes to check with his dad. He says the gnomes are up again, tries to wake his dad up. His dad assures him that this is just a dream. What I find funny about this, we've not been introduced to their mum or stepmum yet, whichever one it is. So I thought maybe their dad's a single parent. But now we can see the mum sleeping next to the dad, although she's not facing the camera. Now I don't know if they didn't pay her enough to actually make a facial appearance, because at the time she gets her head up quickly and asks the dad something, but she's never turning around to look at the camera, which I thought was quite funny.
Mindy, wake up!
What are you doing in my room?
Now, for someone who's meant to be asleep, she gets up and turns around very quickly. And what's funny is, she's not dazed or tired. She's quite awake. But the first thing she's worried about is why he's in her room.
Come on, the gnomes are gone! You have to come!
You're gonna owe me big time.
Joe manages to convince Mindy to go with him. They go to where the gnomes were. The stumps they're usually attached to, they're not on. She thinks Joe's behind it and playing a trick. They then hear some noises.
You'll see.
Who's that?
The next sequence is them in the kind of undergrowth and trees at the back of their garden, and they come across the gnomes, but there are actually more gnomes now, which makes me wonder, and I'm going to ask this quickly now because they don't actually go into this in the episode. There are more gnomes. Are they all from the same place? Are they from another planet, maybe? I don't know, but it's quite interesting that there are more gnomes that are alive, and they all seem to know each other and congregate together. And I just thought that was a little question as well. They then get surrounded by the gnomes, and it looks like it's very easy to run away, or it'd be very easy for them to fight back. The gnomes are even smaller than the kids at this point. The gnomes kind of stand there for a bit just around them without doing anything. One of these gnomes is holding a torch, but at first I thought it was a flare, and I thought this has got to be extreme. But it's a torch.
Why are you doing this?
Don't you know anything about gnomes? It's what we do.
The gnomes explain that this is what gnomes do. They cause mischief anytime, anywhere to anyone, but then they start to fight each other.
Like you!
And they drop a torch. I don't know why they've got a torch when it turns out their weakness is light, hence only coming to life at night. And the torch turns on when it hits the floor, hits one of them, and then they just turn to stone again.
Get off! Hold it right there, I'll turn you into Mount Rushmore.
That was actually quite a good line. As they back away from the gnomes because the torch is starting to flicker and run out of batteries, they actually realise that, well, I realised, they didn't actually realise themselves and make it obvious, but it's quite obvious to the viewer when you see the house in the background. They're slowly backing onto Major McCall's garden.
Come on.
Get us.
Oh no.
You never made it. Get him!
Mindy, run!
Eventually, Joe runs for it and leaves Mindy, who's fallen backwards, and as they go to attack her and leer over her at the last minute, floodlights on, alarms on, and they're turned to stone once again.
Are you okay?
Gotcha, Joe Burton.
Let's get out of here.
Don't you kids run away from me!
Joe and Mindy run away, but Major McCall says he's had enough of these gnomes, enough of this junk.
I've had it with this junk. Gonna get rid of it once and for all. Starting with you.
He picks one of them up to carry them, takes them around the side of his house, I think to put in the trash can, and obviously he goes into the shadow of his house, and we see the face over his shoulder of the gnome coming to life. I'm not sure exactly what happens in this process, and you'll see the result of it in a minute in the ending, but it's kind of implied that he's leering at him, but he's not biting him because his mouth's on view, but it's implied that he's doing something, and McCall just slowly bows down instead of dropping him. And then we cut to morning the next day. The judges are at Joe's house, and his dad's very pleased. His mum's actually there, made a face appearance, so they paid her enough to make an actual cameo appearance in the episode. The judges are judging everything, very old-timey. And they go around the back of this tree at the back of the garden.
No.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen one of those. Not
What
since,
is that?
They come back, and after the dad says,
Well, I'd just like to say that I'm deeply honored to accept the grand prize.
Well, I'm sure you would be if you had won.
Joe apologises for the gnomes. They say no, they're quite cute, they're lovely.
Are you talking about the lawn gnomes?
Oh, no, we love the lawn gnomes. Cute little fellows. Adorable.
Well, then what are you talking about?
That hideous lawn ornament. That.
And they say it's what's at the back of the garden. So then the family go round to look what they're talking about. And Major McCall has been turned into a gnome. Now, that is quite a bad fate for him, but I assume that he'll still come to life at night. So it's going to be an even worse fate for Joe when his neighbour who hated him is now a gnome and will probably ruin his dad's garden and haunt him for the rest of his days while he lives there. But I would have liked to have seen where the gnomes originated from, maybe seen a part 2, because there were other gnomes from the neighbourhood, or at least from somewhere nearby. We saw at least 2 other gnomes in that scene near the end. I would have also liked if they just put a twist on it, because from the title, it's kind of obvious where they're going with it. I would have loved it if it turned out in the end you didn't see the gnomes. Like when you saw that first person view earlier on, it would have been funny if they'd gone with a swerve, like you never see the gnomes move. Turns out it's not the gnomes. Maybe it's that funny little looking lawn ornament dog that I was talking about earlier. Or maybe his dad was destroying McCall's garden, but the whole episode kind of leans towards it's the lawn gnomes. And it would have been a fun little twist, I think. I mean, it's a good little episode. It's fun. It takes place in the garden, which is a bit different to some of the other stuff we've seen. I mean, there's an episode about a plant, and that's even in the basement. So it was nice to see this. I don't know what you thought about the episode. Hopefully the person who requested this, I've done an alright job of covering it. If you've got any more requests, put them below. If you've got any requests especially for Are You Afraid of the Dark, because that's probably one of the only one of these kind of shows I've not covered at least one episode yet. So which is the first one I should do. Obviously, if you liked it, like the video. If you want to see more, subscribe and hit that bell. Ring a ding ding. And I'll see you in the next one. But as always, remember, take it easy.